And now we're live. This is GamesBeat Decides, but we're going to actually have to hit the Facebook Live button, and then we'll really get started right then. This is a new weekly podcast. This is the first of two intros, because like I said, we're going to have to introduce ourselves on Facebook as well. So just wait for that button. There it goes. Go live. I can actually mute that tab. And it looks like that's good to go. So, yeah, this is GamesBeat Decides. It's a new weekly podcast from GamesBeat where the staff of GamesBeat is going to take a couple of gaming topics. Sometimes it'll be a few. Sometimes it might just be one, just depending on the news of the week. And we decide the truth of that question. Any kind of big question that's happening in gaming, we're your brains. We're going to tell you what to think, so you don't have to. I'm Jeff Grubb. I am a reporter for GamesBeat. And with me is Dean Takahashi, our lead writer. Say hi, Dean.
Hello.
And we also have Mike Minotti, our resident ugly person.
I prefer Jeff Grubb's arch nemesis.
Okay, so yeah, let's get right into it. I think that we should probably start with the Nintendo Switch. Now, we're a little bit late to this. We wanted to do this podcast last week, but I still think there's plenty of stuff to talk about here. So our first of three topics this week is going to be, will the Nintendo Switch succeed? And yeah, just I guess let's start like with that. Like it's kind of that basic. Will it succeed? Not just for Nintendo, not just for gamers, just in general. Yes or no? Dean, let's start with you.
But it's a hard one because it's got a chance to maybe be a dud, like the Wii U was. If it sells 10 million units, maybe. But it also has a chance to hit it out of the park if they really execute on it. And NVIDIA brings some of the graphics to the small device, the portable device here. So I'm kind of a little mixed on that right off the bat.
Yes, stay close to your microphone, Dean. Okay, so my thoughts here is that the Switch has a lot of potential. It could take off as long as Nintendo comes out and has a big start with a big game beyond just Zelda. They showed a bunch of big stuff in the trailer. They showed Mario. They showed Skyrim, stuff like that. Big third-party games. Do we think that it's going to have more than Mario at launch, and then it will go into continual support?
Well, Mario's not even really guaranteed for launch. I'm pretty sure they showed, like the first time we saw Mario Galaxy on the Wii was in a very similar kind of like meet the Wii sizzle reel. It just kind of like showed up. They're like, oh, I guess there's a new Mario game. Okay, there's that. And obviously that wasn't launched for the Wii. I forget when that was. Maybe it was that fall. Maybe it was even the next year. There was some time there. So yeah, who even knows if Mario's there? I mean, we've never had Zelda and Mario, like a new game at the launch. If you did, that would be, pretty fantastic. But I don't know. My gut's telling me Mario's not quite launch. It might be more holiday 2017.
If they follow the Wii U playbook, they're going to fail. And so that's something that was a big problem for the Wii U is that it just didn't have enough content for it. It didn't come out soon enough. And they were always able to show cool things that were coming, but they'd show it and they'd say, "Oh, it's going to be here a year from now."
Yeah, and I mean, Nintendo did have some third-party support with the Wii U at the beginning. There, they had Batman and Mass Effect, and Ubisoft is always there for new platforms. They're here for virtual reality. They were there for the Wii. They succeeded with the Wii. They didn't succeed with the Wii U as much. Just Dance, I'm sure, did fine, but I don't know. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think it's going to come out and it's going to be the same dance as always. Nintendo has some third-party support right at the launch. The consumers are just going to buy Nintendo games. They're going to buy their third-party games elsewhere, and then the third-party support dries up. And if that happens, I still think the Switch can succeed. I still want to say NX. Every time I say that name, I still want to say NX. I still think the Switch can succeed, but it won't be as big as it could be if third-party support actually takes off.
And that's where some of the technology can help them because, NVIDIA has the Shield tablet and Shield box out. And, that has the grid-based cloud gaming.
Right.
And you can get a lot of different content that wasn't designed specifically for the Shield by using the cloud. And if NVIDIA gives that and builds that technology for Nintendo, then they can get a lot more games onto the Switch fairly quickly. It'll be, just it won't require the developers to port something specifically over for Switch. They can just play it as long as it becomes available on the cloud platform.
Yeah, and do we think Nintendo's actually going to, like, even if NVIDIA came to Nintendo and said, hey, we could do cloud gaming for you, what are the chances that Nintendo says yes to that?
I think they're doing it with limitations, right? It's just like this thing is probably an Android machine because it runs...
Android hardware, probably not Android OS, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Tegra. So yeah, some version of Android, but you know that Nintendo's not going to allow a big giant pile of Android games onto this on day one.
Mike?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a hard thing to foresee there. Either like that, the whole opening up to Android or the whole cloud gaming thing. I don't know. It doesn't seem very Nintendo-y, right? And besides kind of, like the concept here, we haven't seen anything to suggest that Nintendo is going to stop being very Nintendo about this, right? Mm-hmm. But we still don't know what the online infrastructure is going to be like. Things like, the social media capacities, the digital stores, and all that. I'm kind of still expecting a lot of that stuff to be like what we've seen from the Wii U. Maybe it's a little better. And cloud gaming kind of seems to go heavily beyond that.
Okay, so we need to start making some decisions here about this soon, about whether or not it's going to succeed. But I would say on January 13th, if they come out and they do say, hey, here's the system and it works exactly like we showed in that trailer, on top of that, here is Nintendo Network Plus, like their equivalent to PlayStation Plus, and instead of getting just 2 premium games a month, you get access to the virtual console. And then on top of that, they also have PC streaming and all this other stuff. I think there's no doubt that the Switch succeeds. But is it going to happen?
I think talking about cloud gaming, like that sounds very appealing to me. Doing that kind of virtual console version of that, but especially so many like old games, like NES games specifically, they're so kind of Twitch based, like very precise platforming or action. Like just the smallest bit of lag there.
Well, that doesn't have to be off the cloud. I mean, that could be like their equivalent to PlayStation Plus, where you download the game locally, but then on top of that, they also have this cloud stuff for AAA games that publishers may not want to port. Like they're already doing the work to port it to PC. The cloud infrastructure runs on that. NVIDIA already has that working. Honestly, the only reason that wouldn't be on the Switch is because Nintendo says no. There's no technological reason. There's no other reason. So Nintendo would just have to say no, and that would be it.
Any controller differences that might have some kind of limiting effect. Over time, you can't really reproduce every controller in the current controller. That's sometimes been an obstacle for some of the cloud gaming companies. Is that they have to redesign the game to work with the current controller that's in.
Yeah, and that will be a potential point of struggle, but for the first time, Nintendo's Pro Controller is basically just an Xbox 360 controller. Even when you kind of take the Joy-Cons, I'm going to forget that name a bunch too, and use that in its grip, it does look like an Xbox 360 controller. So I mean, without the D-pad, but those are just buttons that'll serve the same purpose. So I don't think that'll be too big of an issue, but it could be a sticking point, and it just could be something that Nintendo worries about, so they just say no. It's just another reason for them to say no. But here's the thing. I think we should start making our decisions. I'm convinced that it's going to be success, even if it doesn't have all of those big things, because the idea of having a console level Zelda on the go, the biggest Mario games on the go wherever I want, even when it's just on my couch while my wife watches Project Runway or whatever, that is appealing to me, and I think it's appealing to a lot of people, and I think we're seeing that as evidenced in the number of views and the hype around the Switch, especially compared to the Wii U. So I'm going to say my decision is yes, it's going to succeed. What do you guys say?
I'll defer to you, Dean.
Well, I think based on technological maturity, they can succeed this time where the Wii U failed. Like, if you look back at the Wii U and the tablet controller, you really wanted to take that thing off the wire and go somewhere like a Starbucks and play the same game that you were playing on the TV.
Yeah.
And now they can do that, right? And so technology has caught up with that part of the vision. And so you have NVIDIA's Pascal technology as well that can give you outstanding 4K graphics with very little power consumption. So this year it's kind of running hot, but maybe by next year when this comes out, they might be on to Rev 2 of that technology. And they might be able to deliver some really great portable graphics. So you can carry this thing around and have great graphics. So everything is kind of aligned for the original vision that they had with the Wii U to actually come true this time. So I think that it's doable. They can succeed. It's sort of their ball to drop. They really fulfill everything that they've promised over the years with this sort of dual functionality, I guess, on the go and at home. And if they do that, then.
So, yes or no, Dean? This is a decision time. It's on you. Yes or no? Do they succeed?
I was waffling as much as I could there.
Yeah, but we're not going to let that happen. No getting by me.
All right, I say yes.
All right.
This is doable. I think, not just because of confidence in Nintendo and their track record. I think it's also because of confidence in the technology that NVIDIA is providing.
How about you, Mike?
I think that, for one thing, is it going to succeed in the long run? No, that's kind of, more of a hopeful wish. But first year, this thing's definitely going to sell better than the Wii U. I think the timing is just so much better here. You have like these half consoles coming out that are sort of looming, but you don't have like the full-on new consoles that are looming, off in the shadows, right? So that timing works out better. I think people want to like Nintendo, right? Like you see excitement for Nintendo things sometimes. Just like it was never the Wii U because it was such an unappealing console. You saw all the excitement over Pokemon Go. You see the excitement people have just for that NES Mini, right? I think people want to like Nintendo.
Super Mario Run too. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like, people want to get into Nintendo stuff. So if you make a system that it's just a bit more appealing, and I think the Switch does look appealing. I think that its marketing message is very simple. That kind of hey, it's on the TV and now it's on the go. And if you can get the 3DS owners excited about it too, specifically, you're not, if you got everybody who bought a Wii U to get a Switch, that's not going to be enough. But if you get those people, and then, a good portion of people who got the 3DS, and then a couple stragglers maybe who, didn't get either for whatever reason, it definitely seems like the stars are kind of aligning here. And, again, it's going to tie down to some other features like the launch and kind of what they're doing with the online stuff. But yeah, I think this thing's going to succeed.
So we have decided that's 3-0. Yes, it's going to succeed. Okay, I feel pretty good about that, and that is going to kind of take us off the Switch for a while. I actually told you guys a different topic than what we're actually going to do because I've decided I know we talked about the Switch enough. And I know Dean actually mentioned this in our staff chat that he doesn't think that this is anything anyone cares about, but I do, so we're talking about it. Is Bethesda smart for ending its early review copies? Now, I know that's inside baseball, but I think it affects our readers enough. It affects people who buy games enough that it's worth talking about. And I think to start here, we're going to have to define what is smart for Bethesda and whether or not any negative effects it might have on people buying games even matters to them. So to kind of catch everyone up, if you haven't been paying attention, last week Bethesda came out and in a blog post revealed that they are going to stop sending out very early review copies to the media. That means the day before the game comes out, they're going to send out copies to everyone to kind of give you one day to maybe play it. You're not going to get a review out in that time, especially for something like Skyrim or really any game. They've already done this with Doom, and that game was fantastic. So it's not. It doesn't seem like it might be anything related to concern about the quality of the games, or maybe it was because that game got slammed during its beta. But let's kind of just jump in here. And Mike, let's start with you this time. What do you think? Is Bethesda intelligent for making this decision to stop sending out early review copies?
Well, I do think it probably will benefit them just fine, right? We are kind of in this strange era of kind of marketing where it's very easy to control your message these days, right? And when you're sending your game out for reviews, what you're basically doing is opening yourself to not be able to control the message, right? Up until that point, everything everybody's going to hear about the game is from, you, the videos you put together, the live streams you put together, you find some guy on YouTube who, has a lot of followers who is like, a Skyrim fanboy, send them the game. Yeah, they're going to have, nothing bad to say about it. And then, so it's from their angle, I think it's a good thing. For our angle, this is almost kind of the strange thing. I think, it's not good for consumers. And for us, it's almost like, I don't know about you guys. It's kind of funny with game reviews, right? When you tell people what you do, like you're a video game journalist, that's kind of what they think you do, because people who aren't on the inside, they don't even understand what goes into the job. So they think the only thing you can be doing is reviewing games. And a lot of the times, it's kind of a small part of what we do. And it's also the most kind of hassling part of what we do, right? It's probably the least efficient in terms of, what you put into it and all the hours that it can take for, one story, which, and again, not that everything we do is what page view driven or anything cynical like that, but again, like what you will get out of that, it almost doesn't make sense from, us trying to keep a site afloat in that kind of way. So again, it almost doesn't hurt us so much that way in terms of, what we need to get out there. But I think it hurts consumers at least, because they're not going to get that clear image of if a game is good or not, So the smart thing for them to do would be to wait a bit, but we all know how it is. It's hard to wait sometimes when you're excited about a game and it's out and you can play it right now. And especially if, it's one thing if Bethesda really was being honest about, we're not sending it out to anybody, but they're going to send it out to a couple streamers here or there.
They already are.
The hype people, and they're going to show their videos and like, look how good this is, and so on and so forth. So I think it might help them in a very cynical way, I guess. I don't think it hurts us necessarily, but I think it's not a good thing for consumers.
I think it is very consistent with their marketing strategy as it has sort of materialized in this sort of new era. When they held their first ever E3 event in 2015, they had the press wait with everybody else in one big line for 5,000 people, and nobody got to cut in front of lines this year at E3 to go play a game that was available for all of the fans.
There's a great story that you actually had the guy, what's his name, the producer of Skyrim.
Todd Howard.
He took you to the front of the line.
I was standing there with Todd Howard at the front of a VR experience line, and just talking with him, and he said, "Hey, can we get Dean in to see this game now?" And I had to go somewhere else, so I couldn't wait through the whole big long line. The marketing people were there, and they told me, "No, we're not letting press cut into the lines at all." And so you would have to wait. So I just had to miss out on getting that VR experience because they weren't, they were sort of sticking true to this word that the players are just as important as the press.
Yeah.
Influencers as well are no different from the press, and we're going to treat them the same. And they maybe they were getting tired of trying to distinguish who is press, who is an influencer, because players, influencers, press, they're all sort of the same from Bethesda's perspective now. They're treating all of us equally. So from that point of view, they're trying to win favor with the gamers, in that they're saying we're no longer treating a certain group of elite people as more important than you. They're getting some PR points out of this by saying you get this at the same time everybody else does. But it carries with it this sort of problem of consumer reviews and whether or not the consumers will have the right information to make a wise decision about buying the game at the right time. Because if we get the games late, the reviews are going to come out late, and a lot of sales will have already happened by the time.
Yeah. Now, I would point out that the E3 thing is interesting because in general, it still seems like Bethesda has no problem with us acting as a part of their marketing arm. Like, I bet we will still have preview events or early access to developers to talk about how great the game is. These are times before we could be very critical of the product because the developer might say, oh, well, we're going to fix that thing you're worried about, and then we're going to look like a-holes if they do fix it, and we mention it in the preview, which is why a lot of preview materials aren't very critical. So that means Bethesda kind of gets the best of both worlds here, where they can still come to us and say, hey, like, this just happened the other day. They came to me and said, hey, do you want to post a Dishonored gallery of images of the weapons? And I'm like, you know what? I kind of do. Yeah, I'm sure my readers want to know about these things. Some of them are very into Dishonored. Let's go ahead and put that on the site. But now I kind of feel a little gross about that, because I just participated in their marketing, and now they're like, well, when it comes time to actually criticize the game, we're going to stop you because we actually don't want you doing that, or we don't care enough about you doing that to help facilitate that. So they're kind of having their cake, eating it too. But this is not about that. This is about whether or not this is smart for Bethesda. And I think what you guys have all said so far is that in general, it is. It makes sense for their marketing. They are kind of winning one over with the gamers, saying, hey, you're just as important as the press. Your opinion is, why do you care what a reviewer thinks? We care what you think. And that has some cachet. But I also think there's a potential here if one of these games come out and they are very broken, or they are, or they're terrible in a way that could have gotten revealed in reviews, this could backfire, and it could make Bethesda appear cowardly. It could make them appear like they have no problem working with, big sites to get their previews, but when it comes time to really show off what you have, to show off the thing that people are actually going to spend their money on, they're not following through, and that doesn't look as good. And we've seen how fickle and how serious gamers can get when they feel like they are being deceived in any way. So I think Bethesda is potentially playing with fire here.
I think that there's one other thing to think about too, about why they may have done this, and that's the day one patches. And
yes.
A lot of journalists are getting the code early before those patches are effective. And so the games that the journalists are playing are pretty buggy, and they're actually not reflective of what the general consumer population is going to play after they get the patches on day one.
Right.
So in some ways, waiting to give the games to everybody at the same time is actually to create a better consumer review, full picture, I guess. The other part is the multiplayer play, and quite often the reviews come out, and the journalists haven't had a time to play any kind of multiplayer because there was nobody out there to play with.
But I do think those are all convenient excuses for Bethesda to avoid what they really want to avoid, which is any negative criticism, anything that might convince someone to cancel their pre-order. I think that's the real thing here. And all that other stuff is just kind of a convenient excuse.
Yeah, it feels like something they couldn't have gone away with like 10 years ago now, right? They kind of almost needed the climate to be the way it is, where there almost is that kind of small animosity sometimes between readers and the journalists right now. So when you make a move that seems to be, against them, even when it's something that really isn't in their interest at all, they can kind of be, they won't raise up maybe quite as big of a stink about it as they should. And like you said, the only tipping point might be if there is some game that comes out, like, let's say Dishonored 2, for whatever reason, is not good at all, and there's no reviews of it, and all these people buy it, and they find out it's bad, and oops.
Yep. And you mentioned it earlier, Mike, like, it's a lot of work, and sometimes the readers, the people that I always try to write for, I'm like, what would they want to read about? How can I serve them? I'll write about a game and I'll say, you know what, this game's actually busted in this very specific way, and they'll get mad at me for saying that. They'll be like, they'll harass me on Twitter saying you don't know what you're talking about, and weeks later it'll come out and everyone will be like talking about, oh, this game is broken in that way. But that didn't stop everyone from getting mad at me and trying to warn them off. They just want their game that they pre-ordered to be good. Now that's not every gamer, but it's still something I've noticed. However, I think it's probably time to kind of come to a decision about this, and I think this is a tougher one than the Switch one. And Mike, we should probably start with you and work backwards this time. Do you think that this was a smart move for Bethesda?
It's a smart move as long as they keep making good games, right? I mean, everybody was okay with it with Doom, and they keep like now every time a game comes out without day one reviews, they're like, look, Doom was good, so whatever. So I think yes, it's a smart move as long as they're confident enough about it, and I think they are confident about their next few releases, and that's why they did this. I think they know they have at least a bunch of 8s coming out, so nothing's going to come out that people are going to get upset about. So I think it's an okay move for them for now. I think they better be careful.
Dean?
Well, given what they've said about their marketing philosophy and strategy, I think it's just consistent. So it's a good move to live up to what they've been talking about.
So yes or no, Dean? I'm not going to let you waffle.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to go with no, just to kind of create some animosity between us. And I actually do think it could potentially backfire. And I think
you disagree with me.
Yeah, I do, because you mentioned Doom and you're like, oh, it worked out. But did it? That game is great, and it's already on sale for $25.
Yeah, I guess I don't know much about the sales numbers for Doom.
That game should have been hyped up way more, and had they given out early review copies, the buzz around that game may have been explosive to the point where that game is still selling for $60 today. Only came out a few months ago. Overwatch and Uncharted 4 haven't had huge price discounts so far, have they? And they came out in the same month. But Doom, however, they held back. They didn't let reviewers come out with this praise that it definitely received in the end, and it may have hurt them. And I think that could continue. So it's on both sides here, if the game's good or if the game's bad. So I'm going to go with no.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I'm finished. But yeah, I mean, where we have to I think we have to come up with one decision from GamesBeat Decides. It's not just each of us.
Man, I'm wondering why Doom it didn't sell better. I do wonder if it's because May was so crowded.
That was definitely part of it, and I think the buzz would have helped had they had it. But what were you going to say, Dean?
But I do think that if they cut out the journalists like this, they do get less buzz, less attention, and anything that lowers your buzz or attention is actually a very bad thing for overall awareness of a game and whether it sells or not. I do think there's a double-edged sword for them here.
So I think we should say no. I think GamesBeat should say this is not a good idea. Now, I know that might come off as us sounding bitter about not getting early review copies.
Yeah. Is it a good idea in general? No. But you worded it as, is it a good idea for Bethesda? And that's where I get maybe a little tripped up. But ultimately, yeah, if it's not good for everybody else, that eventually comes back to them anyway. So
yeah, I would, given that kind of wording, I would say no, this is not.
Okay. Well, I wanted to stick with, is it good for Bethesda? Because I know that's harder. I still think it's no, because in the long run, I think it will come back to bite them. I mean, they'll be able to shift back.
No, Jeff.
Thank you. Really?
Yeah, Jeff, we can do whatever you want.
All right.
It's all about you.
I think I'm right, that's all. I mean, now you think I'm right, too, and that's what matters to me.
What about Mike? Because right now, he looks like he needs a light bulb in his office there.
When I lean back, the lighting doesn't...
You're very much in the dark there, Mike.
Yeah, one of the questions on the
dark fellow.
One of the questions on Facebook is, did these guys crawl out of their mother's basements? And I think
that's nice.
I think that's about you, Mike. I think that's the dark.
I never lived in my mom's basement.
The darkness down there. Okay, I think that's our first two topics. Dean, are you still good? I know you had a meeting you have to get to.
Check out at this point.
Okay, Dean.
Down the road to Palo Alto.
Okay, well, Dean, you go enjoy Palo Alto. Thanks for joining us. We'll be here next week around the same time on Monday, as long as you don't have any other events. So I'll see you then, Dean.
All right.
Have a good one. All right, Mike.
What important thing are we deciding without Dean?
The fate of GamesBeat. Do we even need Dean? That's what we should decide. We do need him. Okay, so the final topic is going to be something a little more evergreen. We've kind of talked about two newsy topics, and I think each week we're going to try to mix it up with something that is a little bit more evergreen, something that's more kind of just gamers bullshitting about stuff. And this week it's going to be, what was the best video game console controller before this generation? So we're not counting we're not counting the Xbox One controller. We're not counting the DualShock 4 and whatever the Switch is. And I think maybe we probably shouldn't include the Wii U controller, but not like that was going to win anyhow. So
no, Wii U for sure. Which one?
I think we should. I mean, any of them, right? I mean, but whatever. Okay. So I think I'm going to let you start because you've already kind of blurted out what you think is right. So lay out the case for the GameCube controller.
Oh, man. It's so funny because I can't remember a controller except for maybe that Boomerang PlayStation 3 controller that got more ridiculed when it was debuted, and I was a part of that too. But oh my god, I love that GameCube controller. It still just feels so nice in your hands. That clicking you get from those triggers, that's just so satisfying. And like the little like the ridges on the analog stick, so you can still find those kind of sweet spots sometimes for your platforming or whatever. Or just those are just fantastic. And I like that button layout. I like that it's not just the super traditional, four corners, diamond shaped layout, right? It's kind of interesting because, I like this idea that it basically makes every button with the A, like a combo button, very easy to do. You can push A and B at the same time, A and Y at the same time, A and X at the same time. I don't know. Something about the controller. The GameCube in general, man, that's an underappreciated system. If you gave me a GameCube controller that had an extra shoulder button in like clickable analog stick, I could just use that for pretty much everything, I think.
I agree with you to a point. That controller did have some issues, though. I remember trying to play Tony Hawk, and you said you could do the A, B, A, Y, A, X. Yeah, those all worked, but if you had to hit like X and B, or even like B and X or B and Y or whatever, if you try to do those like anything not involving the A,
I guess.
it broke down, and like Tony Hawk, you couldn't. It was unplayable. I had to like do like a claw grip to play Tony Hawk on the GameCube. I mean, that's just one series. I think
you're right.
Maybe we should do the top 3 controllers, just because I think we might end up agreeing on the GameCube controller anyhow. But let's. I want to bring up. I really do like the Super Nintendo controller. Now I know that this is before analog, but I think that controller was kind of. It was such a smart evolution of the NES controller. It introduced shoulder buttons, having 4 face buttons.
And it's that one that actually introduced that diamond-shaped face buttons thing that I was talking about that we,
right.
Now we all have. Even when Sega was trying to like not do it for a while, and then they're like, all right, whatever.
Like beyond analog, it's probably the most influential controller, and for a reason. It just worked. It felt great. Playing 2D games with that D-pad was perfect. Was spectacular. So I think it's right up there.
It's funny because I've been playing a lot of older systems now, so I'm using a lot of these controllers again. I mean, the Super Nintendo controller always feels good.
Now, what about the Genesis 6-button controller?
The only problem with that is that so few games use the 6-button.
Yeah.
It's funny because the Saturn controller is basically the same thing, right? I mean, those are both good controllers. Not great. What's almost more interesting was the Saturn analog controller and then the Dreamcast controller. They were very similar, and they were weird because they had the one analog stick. They didn't, neither of them had 2. Dreamcast was cool because it had the whole VMU thing. So again, those are all kind of interesting controllers. I don't know if any of them were the best ever.
So what about the Xbox 360 controller then?
One's pretty freaking solid. The only thing now is that the Xbox One controller is basically just that, but a little better.
Yeah, especially the latest iteration. I agree with that. I think if we start ranking them, I want to put the Xbox 360 in the top 3, though. Would you have any problems with that? I think we might actually have 1 and 2 then. So it's 1 GameCube controller, because I'm with you on that. I did have problems playing Tony Hawk, but it was just Tony Hawk that was a problem for. And Tony Hawk was always better on other systems anyhow, so who gives a shit?
Still, just the best analog triggers, just that, I don't know, that form.
Yeah, and hitting those buttons.
It's a good controller. It just looks nice. I like it.
The analog clicks, you're right, were just so satisfying.
Like even just like the silhouette of the controller, man. Like I don't know. I love it. I love the shape.
All right, so I'm with you. That's number 1. Xbox 360 controller number 2. Is that good?
Yeah, I still use that mostly if I'm playing a PC game that like I want to use like an actual controller for. I still have like my wired 360 controller that I'll often use for that. And then it's like that's the standard controller now, right? When you think modern video game controller, you're thinking that layout almost exactly.
Right. Yeah, and I do think the Xbox One controller is much better now, especially like I said in that 3rd iteration that they just released with the Xbox One S this year. But that's not in consideration. So Xbox 360 at number 2. So then what goes in at number 3? I mean, that's tough for me. I
guess so. Like the 2. If we should probably do a historical one, right? And the 2 that come to mind are the SNES for the things it did, the shoulder button and the face buttons. Then probably also the DualShock, like the original, right? Which is definitely the most longevity you've ever seen out of a controller, because that thing remained pretty much unchanged from PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3. Really not till 4 when there weren't a ton of changes, but it was kind of changed a bit at least.
I think I would feel good about putting the DualShock in there. I really like the Super Nintendo controller, and it is historically significant. But the DualShock, you're right, it lasted so many generations that it's the controller for so many people that it probably should be on this list.
It's interesting because I've been playing like the original Crash Bandicoots on my PlayStation, and like I busted out like the original PlayStation
Yeah,
controller.
was that didn't use the DualShock, right?
Right, no, like neither of them did. Like the first three, like neither of them did. But it's so weird, like looking at that PlayStation controller with no analog sticks. It literally looks like something's missing.
It looks like a generic PC controller from 1994.
Yes, like those weird PC controllers. Right.
Yeah, that's what that one reminds me of, and that one's definitely not going on this list. I did not like that at all.
To the simplicity of it, I kind of like in a weird way now. But again, it's just at this point, it's just like this is so old. It's interesting.
Okay, well, you're wrong about that, but I think we're right about putting the DualShock on there. So, do you feel good about that top three?
I like it.
Okay, so GameCube, 360, original DualShock. And kind of that whole those three generations of DualShock.
I do wonder how many people agree with the GameCube, because it seems like some people are kind of hit or miss with the GameCube, right?
This is not people decide. This is GamesBeat Decides.
That's right. We are the GamesBeat.
And now they're all wrong because this is the decision that's been made for all of them.
This isn't Bethesda. We're not all equals.
Damn right. Okay, so yeah, I feel good about that. Like, any other last thoughts about controllers before we kind of wrap up the podcast?
I guess, just curious about how, where the Switch is going to compare in that. And
I think that's what
I am kind of interested in if I'm going to be comfortable enough with that weird sort of Joy-Con, like, connecting thingy to play games even when they're on TV, if I'm just going to always go to that Pro controller, which basically is the Xbox 360 controller.
I think there's a good chance that grip and Joy-Con combination is going to be very comfortable. But there is the chance that Nintendo just effed it up because they do F up controllers sometimes. As many great controllers as they've made, they've also made some real stinkers. I know most people hate the N64 controller. I actually didn't mind it, but I know most people hate it, and that's an example of it.
That controller is interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting, and once you know how to hold it, I think it's fine. I mean, yeah, it's weird, but whatever.
There's definitely never been a less intuitive controller because everybody goes for that left grip.
Everyone holds it differently,
nobody
too.
knows to hold it in the middle at first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everyone holds it differently. Even when you do hold it in the middle, it's still some people kind of have a different grip on it. But yeah, so I think the Switch is going to be comfortable because it has to be, because if Nintendo screws that up, what the hell were they thinking? And it looks like a wafer.
Right side.
Yeah, they got that right, thankfully. Like, for people that don't know, the Wii U Pro controller has the analog stick above the buttons, and if you can imagine playing a game like a shooter and you have the stick up here, normally you actually kind of like bend your thumb up to hit the buttons. This doesn't work. You have to completely take your thumb off the stick and reach down, and that was just the worst.
Strange.
Yeah, strange and dumb. Okay, Mike, I think that's going to wrap it up for our decision topics. So I think we should go over everything again. Our first topic was, will the Nintendo Switch succeed? And we said yes. You still feel comfortable about that?
And I'm not going to lie, there's a little wishful thinking in my part, because I like Nintendo stuff a lot, right? I like Nintendo games. I think the Switch looks cool. It is a little scary because it's going to have to compete with two other systems, right? You still have to compete with the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. But it's something that excites me about the Switch I've been saying is that this is the first Nintendo system in so long where the kind of console gimmick doesn't interfere with actual gameplay design, right? Like, nobody has to make a Switch game and think, well, how do we incorporate this feature? How do we have dual screen things or motion controls or the two-screen experience? No, they just have to make games. And I think when people, games on Nintendo consoles, I think have always been fun. Like, this will be the first system that really does that since the GameCube. And again, I love the GameCube. So, of course, the GameCube wasn't a huge financial success, but it did all right.
Yeah.
Honestly, at this point, if the Switch did GameCube numbers, I think people would almost be like, hey, yeah, not bad.
I do. I think that's a success. So I think that's why I'm comfortable saying yes, because I think the bar is actually pretty low. It doesn't have to be a Wii. It's not going to be a Wii. Analysts don't think it's going to be a Wii. Nintendo, I think, obviously doesn't think it's going to be a Wii. I think they can have a big hit, but I just think it can do GameCube numbers, maybe a little bit better, and in that case, it's a success. So our second topic was Bethesda smart for deciding to stop sending out early review copies, and we went with no after some convincing from myself. How do you feel, Mike?
Yeah, again, it's just strange. It definitely feels like, and I guess that's how I think about it. We say, it'll be good until one bad game comes out, but that's inevitably going to happen, right? No publisher can have good games all the time. But that is going to release something, especially, they do so many open worldy type games that can often have issues of some kind or another. So, yeah, at some point, I think they might have to relent on this, right? Like, can this really be the way things go? We're never going to send out review copies of games to people anymore.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a pendulum that swings back.
Hard to imagine. I mean, that's just how everything goes, right? For any form of entertainment, there's always advanced copies of it, right? Maybe the music industry isn't like that. I don't know too much about that, but movies. There's always
who reads music reviews? I think that's a little different. I mean, maybe games are getting to a point where who reads gaming reviews, and there's an argument for that. But I don't think it's quite the same as music reviews, where I mean, if you want to know how good music is, are you going to read the review, or are you just going to load up Spotify and listen to it for free and find out for yourself? Like, it's so readily
a song in a few minutes.
It's so readily available that, like, why not just go do it for yourself? Gaming, I mean, that's why no one reviews free-to-play mobile gaming, because just go find out for yourself. It's right there on everyone's phone. But gaming, I think at the 60. Yeah, go ahead.
Remember when all those mobile sites were happening? Like, some of us were even trying to hire us, and it's like, because mobile games happening, we need to review all these mobile games. And it didn't work out so well.
That was a bad idea. Okay, I think it's a no, and I feel pretty comfortable with that. And then finally, that list, the top 3 gaming controllers before this generation. Number 1, GameCube. Number 2, Xbox 360. And then number 3 was the DualShock. Yeah.
With any of them, doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. It's just DualShock, before the 4. All right, Mike. I think that's going to wrap it up. We should probably have like an outro where we mention a bunch of stuff. I haven't thought that up yet because this is our first kind of testing episode. But, go to GamesBeat.com for anything more from us. We'll post this podcast and the video up on there. We will have a podcast feed to subscribe to in the future. It's probably not going to be ready for at least a couple of days, and probably not until next week. In the meantime, though, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Facebook.com VentureBeat or /VentureBeat to kind of like us there. And if you do that, whenever we do one of these live, you can watch it on Facebook. Other than that, Mike, you want to say your Twitter handle and if there's any stories you want to talk about or anything like that?
My Twitter handle is Tolkoto, TOLKOTO. But yeah, check us out on GamesBeat. I did a fun story where I kind of rated, opposite of controllers. I rated all the names of the Nintendo consoles, and that went up over the weekend. Just go to GamesBeat and look for that one. I thought that was kind of a fun thing to do. Then you can also see me do another podcast that I do with my brother called Exploding Barrel Podcast, and that's on iTunes. And that's kind of gaming and other kind of nerd culture stuff, but mostly gaming.
I hate that podcast. I listen to it every week.
No, you're never allowed to be on it. We hate you.
I'm just Jeff Grubb, JEFFGRUBB on Twitter. Get me there.
Handle, bro.
And we will be... we're going to be streaming a video game later, kind of a Halloween thing where we try to scare each other. And we're both giant cowards, so that it should be hilarious to watch us try to scare each other.
I might play like 2 minutes. Be like, okay,
I know. I might just pee myself and be done. But other than that, I'm just going to be reviewing a bunch of stuff, through Thanksgiving because it's that time of year. So keep an eye out for that. Most recently, I reviewed Titanfall 2, and I felt very strongly about it, that it is a great game. So check that out. But other than that, this is the podcast, Mike. So I think we should say goodbye. And like I said, we'll be back next week at the same time. So catch us then. But yeah, and until then, we'll see you on the next podcast.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Oh, God, I got to find the button to end this. They can still hear me. Oh, no.